you can and you're running with kings. But how far could you go if you run with the wind? And the chances you take are what give you wings, and you can fly.
Welcome back to Consider Civility. I am Lew Bayer, and I am interviewing Kent Roberts, co-founder of the Civility Center today. And in this segment, I'd like to switch to a second book. We've been in some of our segments talking to Kent about community weaving, and a few times Bring a Dish to Pass too, but this segment is about Bring a Dish. And Kent, I'd like to look a little bit at this idea of a specific community stakeholders. And so in the book, you reference a few different stakeholders, but for the purposes of our short talk today, if we can focus on business as a stakeholder, can you talk a little bit about how businesses should show up? Just to give the listener a sense of what that means. Are you an active participant, partner? I'm very interested in your view of that. Thank you, Kent.
Thanks, Lou. It's a good question. And I think that once you throw that question out to business leaders, I believe they can come up with some real unique ideas of how they can integrate with the community, the concepts that we're talking about. First of all, in a lot of this work, either you're learning or you're dying. In the world of business, especially in today's world, if you're not a learning organization, you're a dying organization. So learning becomes an important principle. In fact, the main key principle of growing and continuing your business. So it's important that if we could create a learning community, so to speak, and from this learning community, this community of learners, they are hiring people from this community of learners, it will blend in and make it easier for them to work in their trainings, the whole concept, the importance of learning. And it used to be that you could just come and do your job and go home. Well, today, people are asked to make many, many decisions at work. And if they make the wrong decisions, it can mean a loss of business. Eventually, it could maybe even bring the downfall of the business organization completely. So there's a vested interest in the private sector in creating a community of learners. Now, that leads us to think about schools. I mean, schools are where people learn. And it only makes sense that the private sector should find some dialogue and some ways in which they can share some of their thoughts on learning with the educators within a community. I think that educators who think that I don't need to be talking about education because I'm the lead educator and I know all the answers, and don't you tell me what to do. Well, they're not telling them what to teach or how to do things. They're just talking about the whole concept of learning and how can we share? How can we help? How can we support learning in a way? And especially if the private sector sees that the people who are coming from the community are lacking in certain areas of learning, skill sets, and things that they desperately, desperately need to hire people who have these skill sets. It would be stupid for them not to be sharing that information with the learning institutions of the community. If we take a step back and take a look at it and becoming a community of learners and a learning community and learning organizations and all these things such as that, the bigger picture in mind, then we can work together to find ways in which we can do this. So I think it's really important that we have this. Now, there are so many opportunities within every community that are lost and not leveraged because people just don't think. Now, it's important if I'm a learning organization, especially if I'm one of the bigger corporations and not a small business, but a business that has 70 to 100 employees or whatever, you take the time often to do some in-service training, or either in part in small group, or sometimes even shut everything down to do a training for the entire organization. If you do these trainings, why would you not blend in some of the local educators and, if possible, students? We miss learning opportunities all the time. And if the school system has brought in a keynote speaker to speak to their teachers or their students or whatever, why not include the private sector invitation for them to come and listen? Talk about creating common language, talk about creating common goals and ways in which you can work with each other. We just need to share the learning, and we need to, when possible, do the cross training and the cross learning. I can't even begin to tell you how important that really is. You're afraid that some secrets are going to get out. Well, maybe when it comes to learning, we ought to let a few more secrets out, because that's what separates a growing, thriving organization and community than one that is dying. A community that learns together is going to prosper. So how can we leverage all the learning opportunities that exist? And how can we share and be genuine in wanting everyone to be a part of this learning experience? I think it's important that in the private sector, whether it be even within churches or community organizations, or especially our educational institutions, that we put private sector people on many of the decision-making bodies when it's possible, whether it be curriculum development, or whether it be choosing the textbooks that we are going to use, or all these other things that might possibly private sector would have some, I think, valuable input. So it sure seems to me that if we're in a community that values learning, that we try to find ways in which we can integrate, cross-train, work together in different ways, engage young people that will get them excited, and possibly say, I'm going to go away and I'm going to learn how to do this, but I want to come back and I want to work in your business, or I want to be here, because not everyone is like you. I can see that. So this is how you cultivate the private sector and the learning culture of a community. So I think that I have there's a lot of things that if you got into the business as partners in the secondary education, that's a whole other conversation, Lou, that would take a long time. But I think that those types of partnerships are really exciting, and hopefully I've answered your question.
Most definitely. Thanks so much for that, Kent. And thank you for joining us on Consider Civility. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and check back in. We're posting regular interview with Kent Roberts usually 2, sometimes 3 times a week. So please keep visiting us at Consider Civility. Thank you.
The reason why each of us comes to this earth, and your actions will always speak louder than words, and you'll never know what you're capable of until you try.